Um, Guys, let me briefly tell you about Edupreneur Village for those guys who are joining for the first time and they have not attended last two webinars. Um, so, Edupreneur Village is India's first venture capital fund um, focused on education, learning, skilling, as well as corporate training. So, it is first venture capital fund to focus on these domains. We are also backed by Shri Aurobindo Society Pondicherry, which has got a lot of non-profit programs in education. So the value we provide to the education startups is not only do we have an education focus in terms of our investments, but we also can scale you guys up through Shri Aurobindo Society and its education networks and its deep roots in the country's education ecosystem. So that's the brief about us. There is also an announcement of uh, change in timelines. So the earlier timelines were to announce the finalists by uh, 14th of November. Uh, those dates have been changed to 30th of December now, and the last date to submit your business plan summaries are 16th of December. Um, so, without further delay, let me just get started. We're going to spend next 45 odd minutes understanding from a global education expert, Anip Sharma. So, just to give a brief background about Anip, Anip is a partner in LEK Consulting, which is world's premier education consulting firm. He lives in Singapore and uh, takes care of China and Southeast Asia operations of LEK. He is a very frequent speaker in world's topmost education conferences, and he advises many big education companies across the world on their education problems or their investment deals or a variety of other areas of consulting in education. So, Anip, I'll hand it over to you for a brief introduction for our audience.
Thank you, Nitin. And guys, I want to start by apologizing for the delay. As usual, in every conversation about online and edtech education, we are constantly reminded how important the ecosystem and the platforms are. And this is not different. Nitin has very kindly made the introduction. I think for the purposes of this discussion, what is probably most relevant is that LEK Global Education Practice and members of the team, such as I, are the largest advisors to the education sector globally. We see a lot of models, edtech, non-edtech models around the world, and hopefully I'll be able to bring that experience to this conversation in a relevant format. Also, I apologize for the shabby look. This is my Sunday look. Just came back from a run, so excuse me for that. But I'm told this is also the entrepreneur look, so that should be okay.
Yeah, Anip, you look smart.
Thank you. You're very kind.
So, Anip, for a start, I request you to share a few thoughts about, uh, what's the edtech focused support ecosystem that you see in other countries outside China, and do you see that becomes the determinant of success of those startups in those countries? This will give a good idea to our audiences. How is India different in terms of that ecosystem support, and what role Edupreneur Village may play in this ecosystem?
Sure. Uh, well, the ecosystem and successful startup ecosystem, whether it's Silicon Valley or increasingly now ecosystems in Shenzhen and in around Beijing, have been well studied. There are a few common characteristics. It's usually often presence of an anchor university which provides what I call as intellectual horsepower. So whether it's Stanford in Silicon Valley or Beta or Peking in Beijing, or closer to home, I've seen probably IIT Bombay emerge as that hub, which is also incidentally my alma mater. So uh, the first is of course the presence of a strong intellectual engine. The second is of course capital and capital hubs around it. Third is of course people and the culture of innovation. I think if I compare India more generally speaking, all of those ingredients are around and in several places, except that they are not concentrated in any one particular area. And what probably is missing in India for most bits is an early stage venture capital ecosystem. It is only getting started. People like Edupreneur are investing in that, but that is something which is missing in the ecosystem right now.
Sure, Anip. It's only a start. I think it's a long journey ahead, but with the very clear intent of filling that gap of early stage investment. When the entrepreneurs have semblance of an idea, a semblance of a team, and a semblance of product. That's when we want to fund them, support them, and take them to a point where they're ready for maybe pre-series A investment or a series A investment. So with that, let me jump into some of the nuances of uh, uh, Chinese edtech ecosystem and Indian edtech ecosystem. Uh, you know, why China? Well, it's a country which always intrigues me because the consumer numbers are almost same as in India. But still, we see Chinese companies making very, very big strides in education. One of the reasons I keep hearing is that the Chinese consumer is different, and hence the adoption of technologies in Chinese ecosystem is much higher compared to India. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about it, and with that, the audience will be able to appreciate what are the differences if there are, and handle them accordingly. Also, I'd like you to enumerate some of the stars of Chinese edtech ecosystem which have gotten successes.
Sure. Ajay, it's an interesting question, an interesting comparison. I mean, it always China's a neighbor of ours, almost similar population. Aspirationally, we see ourselves competing with China as well. So on surface, things look similar, right? So let's say population is almost similar. The internet users in China are about 800 million. India is almost touching about 500 million. So things seem similar. Actually, interestingly, consumer trends are similar, with a few differences, of course, but there is strong emphasis on education in both markets. There is what I call as fear of missing out, or FOMO. And there's huge willingness for parents to spend on education. It's seen as a tool for social mobility. There's competition to get into good universities and seats. So all of that is very similar. But that's probably where the similarities actually end. And if I have to point out one key difference, and there are a few, the one key difference is actually just sheer affluence. And it cannot be ignored because it shows itself and manifests itself in various ways. So just to give you guys a sense, um, China's GDP per capita is about eight and a half thousand US dollars. India is almost $2,000. So it's one fourth. China is inching towards an upper middle income country. And this has implications on price points and by definition, scalability. And it cannot be ignored. And all the Indian entrepreneurs who are looking at this need to be mindful of this because as you build up solutions which are sustainable, you need to maintain a certain price point, and that price point cannot be achieved across India, right? So affluence is key, and we should never forget that. Some other differences are actually China, a lot of capital has gone into and innovation has been made in the area of English language training. and that's very typical for China, and especially from native English speakers. So there is a huge cultural tendency or otherwise to learn from native English speakers, and any online models which sort of help with that have scaled up. In India, we are not. We of course value English language training quite a bit, but we don't value it as much from native English speakers, or for that matter, willing to pay for it. So that's again different. The mobile ecosystem, so essentially the WeChat generation, social connectivity on just one platform, very strong mobile payment systems. That's also different for China compared to India. China has very high adoption, and the way it impacts is mobile solutions scale up very, very quickly because the whole ecosystem is there. The other difference is, I mean, dialects are different in every province in China, but essentially the language is one. So Mandarin. So scalability of a platform is much higher. While in India, that's not true. So just to give you a sense, India and China have almost the same number of students in school going age, about 250 million. But in India, only 40 million can access an English based content across cities. So imagine suddenly your addressable market with an English-based solution is one fourth or less than, or actually not one sixth, right? So and then curriculum in China is common with some provincial differences. Not true in India. In India, you have CBSE, ICSE, but you have each state having their own curriculum. So there are quite a few differences, which is something one needs to keep in mind. The other question which Nitin had asked was around the stars of the Chinese ecosystem. Essentially, the
So,
star.
so Anip, just to stay focused on your thoughts of the earlier question, the first question. Um, guys, first, the number of people who you can reach out through English content is much higher in China, right? Second is the per capita income of Chinese households is almost four times, because of which the willingness to pay is higher. Um, but therein lies the opportunity, right? Uh, if we would have reached that ecosystem, then there was no opportunity, you know. So we're going to reach there in about 4 years, 5 years, 6 years time. So it is all the more reason for you to stay put and uh, be ready when the tipping point comes. You see. Um, so Anip, on the side of the school system, in India, uh, uh, we don't have the extensive laptop or tabs availability in the classrooms. What about China?
Actually, China has fairly decent device penetration. So, I mean, of course, in tier five cities, that's only happening. But the Chinese have invested in strong broadband penetration, fast broadband penetration, good devices in classrooms. General device connectivity is high. So, ability to get technology in classrooms or in the hands of consumers is much higher. Although, in the same vein, I would say that most of the models which you see in China, which have scaled up and which everybody gets excited about, are actually B2C models. So everybody is focusing on reaching directly to the consumers, whether it's on their tablets, laptops, or mobile phones, which is actually achievable in India as well, because India, even the smartphone penetration, even in, let's say, rural areas, to give you a sense, is growing quite fast. In fact, smartphone penetration overall is growing quite fast. So, I mean, like India skipped almost the fixed line telephony generation and moved just to mobile. I mean, maybe in learning that could happen as well. That's just an idea.
Okay, so guys, another learning on that. Um, uh, that if you're focusing your growth story on adoption of your content in the classrooms, so that is not going to happen just yet, because the infrastructure to be able to do that in schools does not exist. You can reach maybe 50, 100, 200, 300 schools at best if you focus on that kind of delivery, but you won't be able to go beyond that just yet, So keep that in mind when you plan your scale up strategies. Um, so now coming to the second leg of the question, Anip, uh, which are the stars in Chinese ecosystem? We see there are more than 20 odd companies in China who have raised about $100 million in edtech, but in India there is only probably one or two. So which are these stars towards which Indian edtech entrepreneurs can look up to?
So most of the money, I would say 80% of the capital in China in the edtech space has been deployed in two sectors. First is English language training. The second is tutoring and some form of online tutoring, right? So English language training, as I said, the story in China is very much about how can large populations across city tiers can access and learn English from a native English speaker. So any solution around that, basically innovation and access and delivery has scaled up, and lots of capital have gone into that. Less relevant in India, although in a different context, it may be, and we'll talk about that later. But that's one. The second place where money has gone in China is tutoring, and you will understand this intuitively, all of those who are on this webinar or otherwise. um, the willingness of parents to spend on the kids' education, especially to get better outcomes, is much higher. So solutions around one-on-one tutoring, one-is-to-many tutoring, content solutions, live streaming. People are trying almost everything, but the whole idea is to help improve outcomes of students and support the tutoring industry.
Okay, so I see a lot of examples of companies who are falling in these two domains. English language training being focused upon by companies like VIP Kid, VIP ABC, 51 Talk, Go to Kids. On the tutoring side, there are Itse Zue, Yuan Fudao, Zue Bang, Tal Online, Kulearn, and many more. You see. So guys, feel free to research on these companies, see their business models, see their journeys, try to learn from them. That's the fastest way to reach success, by learning from other people's mistakes. Okay. So, Anip, why don't we move forward? And now I want to focus on the secret sauce of scaling up. We often see a lot of Chinese companies. I can take a few examples: WhipKid or Yuan Fudao. Reaching massive numbers in 4 5 years. From scratch to $2 billion valuations and 100 million users. Those kind of numbers. How do they do that? We haven't seen such stories in India.
Yeah, we have seen very few, and Baidu is probably the only example. But let's first talk about China. Essentially, the secret sauce is very simple. The first is they've realized that by the time the companies would convince the schools and individual school principals and the local school districts on adoption, it would take a lot of time. So people have said, let's focus on sectors where parents want their kids to have an edge, which is tutoring. They want their kids to do well in schools, in Gaokao and Zhongkao, which are essentially your school leaving examination in China, very similar to your NEET and CAT and kind of exams, which sort of shape the destiny of students in many ways, right? And let's focus on this, and the end consumer will pay. So almost all the models, with very few exceptions, are B2C, right? So that is lesson number one. Now this lesson goes hand in hand with a very high cash burn strategy. So all of these companies have raised massive amounts of capital, and invested in marketing, brand building, customer acquisition. And as they have acquired consumers on 100%, 50% on a month-on-month basis, they have lapped up more capital and have just scaled into what they call as edtech unicorns. I personally don't like the word unicorn. It actually means a mythical character, something which is not real, but industry seems to use it, right? So that is really the secret sauce. And now in India, uh, essentially what has happened is now, and again, Baiju is a great example. Baiju, if I have to strip out everything, right, and I'm here, I'm being a bit harsh on Baiju. The way I see it is, it's a content company. It's a publisher which has gone B2C, right? They will innovate and they will do different things. That just happens when you have capital. You can hire smart people, and smart people can figure out smart solutions. But Baiju has invested massively in marketing and has gone B2C, right? And that has just enabled them to scale up like crazy. And now everybody is going after them. Now, how many more Baijus can be created, or Baiju-like institutions can be created, is up for debate. But that's really the main difference between India and China.
Okay, and if what I hear is the importance of raising capital at the right time, and come out of that mental block that I don't need to raise capital because I can grow organically at my own pace, and I don't need external investment. So, guys, these are the times where, when whether you like it or not, uh, just on the power of money, your competitors can outshine you. And despite being from the better lineage, a better product, better lead time in coming to the market, you can still be beaten, and you will be beaten if you don't focus on capital raising at the right times. So, Anip, is that the right conclusion?
That is one of the conclusions. Also, at the heart of it, like every entrepreneur or every success story, you need to solve a problem which matters to people, and a problem where people are willing to pay money for it. Like, for example, today, if you say that, look, I'm going to teach arts and crafts online, yeah, sure, there will be some people who would be willing to do that, but it will be an enrichment product, right? Again, nothing against art and craft. I think it's a great skill to have, but people are, you have to understand what consumers are willing to pay for, and where that acute need to get ahead of others just because of demand supply gap in university acceptances or otherwise lies. I mean, all of us, I mean, assuming most of us are from the Indian system, so you can just see what the kind of frenzy there is around college admissions, right? And doing well in board examinations. Now, people will pay, even if, like, see, you can't really explain the efficacy of the product to the consumer in a short period of time. But if the problem is acute enough, if the parents or student feel that there is a probability that their performance could be better by using a certain product, then they will spend on that product. And you need to find those niches,
Okay,
and
so
scale up from there.
yeah, okay. So, Anip, what I hear is that always think problem first and solution later. As entrepreneurs, we are always tempted with those notions of, eureka moment where you have an idea and you just go ahead and, want to bring that idea into reality without thinking of problem, you know. So, guys, always think of a very, very naturally existing problem. It might be a niche, but think of the problem and try to have a perfect solution for it. That is the singular recipe for success. Uh, Anip, Can you share a few examples of entrepreneurs who probably, just by identifying a niche problem and devising a cool solution to it, have made it big because of that?
So let me again give examples from China, and then I can contrast it a little bit from India, where hopefully you'll know most of these companies. So China, as I said, as I explained to you guys earlier, English language training is big, right? So let's say I'm a kid who is living in Beijing or Shanghai. There are many native expat teachers who come to Shanghai, Beijing, and teach in English language training centers. But imagine I'm a child living in Fujian or Qingdao. There aren't too many native speakers there, but I still want to learn English. So what is the solution? An online solution. And an online solution, even if half as good as center-based solution, is better for that city because they don't have anything, right? There's just no access. So it is solving for access. It's an acute problem, and people are willing to pay for that. Now in tutoring, let's extend that argument in tutoring, and here you will find it resonance with a lot of with the Indian ecosystem as well. Tutoring, there are a few things. First is, if I'm in a tier 1 city, I can go to tutoring centers, right? But I go from one tutoring center to another tutoring center. So first I have school, then after that I'm going to tutoring centers all the time. When do I actually study, right? So one of the solutions is, can online help me solve for my travel time and help me learn flexibly? Or can online help me learn for parts of the problem for which I don't need to go to tutoring centers? Like, let's say for concept understanding, I need to go, but for practice, I don't need to. Can online help me with that? Right? So think about it in terms of disaggregating the experience as well. So there is a convenience and flexibility angle. There is an access angle. But then look at a tier 2, tier 3 city in India, or for that matter in China. Even good quality teachers are not available. You go to teachers who just happen to be there and happen to become big because there is no alternative, right? And you're going at 5 o'clock in the morning. I at one point of time when I was growing up, long time ago, I used to go to a tuition center at 5 a.m. in the morning, right? Because that was the only slot which was available. And
Me too, Anil.
it's stupid, but at that point of time, that was the most important thing in the world. So can you solve for those problems? Like, is it a content issue? And Baiju is solving for that. But Baiju's content is being used by students in a supplementary format. They help understand concepts better. But there could be many more solutions to it.
Okay. So, guys, there are infinite problems in education in India. Uh, you are the ones who are going to pinpoint those problems uh, uh, before others do it, and find solutions to them. Don't ever think that much of the problems have already been identified and hence there is no problem left to solve. That's entrepreneurship, to find a problem which others don't see. Okay. Uh, so, Anip, I'm going to go a little further uh, and talk about a few models which are seeing green shoots here in India, and see if you find evidence of that happening in China as well. One of them being hybrid models, wherein you acquire customers through online channels, but in order to maintain relations with them, you create offline centers or offline facilities, or tie up with them, uh, and focus on delivery through those offline channels. Um, what's the evidence you see in China of the hybrid models being the norm of the future?
Yeah, and just to be clear, Nitin, the way you described it is just lead generation through the online channel, and which is very common. And that's like level one, and that happens in India irrespective, right? You can, wherever your consumer is, you can generate lead, online, offline, doesn't matter. The
Yeah,
way
that's why
I
I said it's green shoots of this happening, but how it can mature further? from your
Correct.
experience?
Correct. So I think the in online hybrid delivery is actually quite an interesting concept. Although it almost seems intuitive that hybrid should win and hybrid should be the future. But I think life will come a full circle before that happens, because as of now is the heady age of I'm going to reinvent learning. So most online providers are saying we are going to reinvent learning, and whether they'll be successful or not, I wish them luck, but we'll see how that one goes. Because the learning is such a complex process, and education is such a complex process that I'm not even sure that you can deliver it in 100% context. So just to give you an example, most online learning models in China have a human element. So you're teaching, let's say, a 25-minute lesson using online, but there is a lot of customer support behind it. A VIP kid, which is now valued at $3 billion, actually has a team of probably 60,000 teachers on, and maybe 10,000 people in their support staff, and who are learning partners, sort of helping the students. So do you call that a hybrid experience, online experience? That's just terminology. But essentially the way to think about this is that break up the learning experience into parts and see which one of them would be best adapted in an online context, and the ones which will need human interaction, social interaction, and eventually physical interaction. And that's where probably the right mix, and it will vary for different customer cohorts. For example, adult learners, and we haven't talked a lot about adult learners, let's say people who are upgrading their skills and vocational or degree programs. I mean, they prefer online learning just because life is difficult and you can learn on the go, etc. But still, over the weekend, people want some sort of a discussion, meet up, or whatever that is. So I guess we're talking about, I mean, we can go deep in any one of these, but my general point is that hybrid solutions need to be thought of it's always a customer first strategy. Understand what the customer wants, how does the customer learn, and devise a solution on the back of that.
Sure. So, before going further, I'd just like to remind the audience that you can shoot in all your questions to the chat box, and my team will hand over those questions to me at 12:50, and then I will pose those questions to Anip for you to have a better answer. Um, so, just to move further, Anip, there is another common theme between India and China, and that is bottom up pyramid. So India has got very big bottom up pyramid, and China also is in similar boat. Though the Chinese bottom up pyramid might be a little higher than India's bottom up pyramid. Uh, in India, what we see as a very core problem, despite all the good intentions, a lot of edtech entrepreneurs and other entrepreneurs in general as well want to reach out to that bottom of pyramid, but they can't do it profitably. What are your inferences from Chinese ecosystem or some of the other Southeast Asian countries of such bottom of pyramid education models working out? Because at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? How to create a mass delivery of quality, affordable education as reality.
Yeah, that's the holy grail, isn't it? High
Yeah,
quality mass delivery.
that was a
Uh,
loaded statement. Mass delivery of
Almost
quality,
seems like a
affordable
dream.
education. Yeah,
uh, no, but it is an ambitious one, and it is something worth fighting for. The question is how to do it in a sustainable way and make money. And my instinct is that technology probably has a strong role to play. And the way I would think about it is that really what is the alternative? And we don't have to be the best. We just have to be better than what is currently available, right?
Yeah.
Let's take, many of you would have heard of bridge schools, right? Now, all of us who have had better opportunities in life can scoff at bridge schools and say that, oh, it's school in a box solution, whatever, it doesn't work, blah blah, etc. But the reality is that bridge solutions is competing with a public school teacher in India who doesn't even want to show up in class, right? So at least you have somebody who is trained or who has the tools to deliver something, and kids have an opportunity to succeed. So you don't have to be the best, you just have to be better than the alternative which is available, which shouldn't be that hard. The question is, how do you do it in a less, with less and less human intervention, because human intervention is costly, and how do you deliver that solution, how do you find that solution in the hands of people? So what we see in China, like some examples, right? Again, English language training, we are seeing almost like teacher-less centers, right? So people are setting up centers where live streaming is happening, almost like distance education, but a modern version of distance education, not like correspondence courses just dumped through postal delivery, but actually small footprint centers where you have live streaming, you have technology solutions, right? A lot of solutions. Offline tutoring centers are being supported by high quality content from some of the bigger guys, right? We are seeing some edutainment solutions, some content only solutions, especially on a mobile platform. So, for example, let's say you want to practice your pronunciation. So there is an app called Luli Show, which has just gotten listed on NASDAQ, I think, or NYSE. It just helps you. You can record your pronunciation and it will repeat back to you, right? You learn English that way. There are a couple of solutions in India also similar to that, which would probably be applicable for quote unquote bottom of pyramid. So I think the key is be better than what is currently available. Don't try to be the best, right? And use mobile only, because I think India will just go to smartphones, like, and people will adopt it, find a mobile learning solution, and make it a technology only heavy with less and less human intervention. And I think that's where probably that's the holy grail, the winning nexus.
Can you make bottom of pyramid pay at all in India? I just want to understand from you. It seems very difficult to do that in India, but have Chinese edtech companies been successful in making bottom of pyramid pay?
You have to find, again, solutions to solve which matter. For example, if you can get somebody, let's say you are solving for vocational education, right? And if you can get somebody even whatever training or upskilling, they can get, let's say, 5,000 rupees more per month, right? So that is on a yearly basis about 60,000 rupees. Legitimately, you can price your product anywhere between 15 to 30,000 rupees, which is not bad. Just to put things in perspective, Baiju's product is 30,000 rupees, the base product, and they've built a massive sales engine on the back of that. So it is possible to do that. Salesforce in India is not that expensive as well, but you have to solve a problem which means something. Like, again, I gave the example of English, but just learning better pronunciation may be helpful for drivers in the tourism industry, right? And if you speak English, automatically your pay goes up and you can charge for that. But it is not easy, because learning anything new is not easy, right? It takes time. So how do you build engagement in the product and all of those things? And then it starts to become complicated.
Yeah. So, guys, the key is to find problems which matter to that audience. And if you find the right solution for that right problem, they will pay. You know, just to share a few examples, one of them being Platzi. You know, Platzi is a South American education company. Search out for it online. uh, what they do is, they provide online education to those people who do not have skills. So they provide skills through online channel, so that these folks can become employable, or they can do their own small business, right? So now, how enticing is it, right? You enable people to earn in small way. So if you do that, then people are going to pay. You see. uh, so just to go further, uh, and arbitrage opportunities have been my favorite, right? uh, you just find a few successful examples, or a few good products working in other geographies, and you make clones out here in India. And you probably can't go wrong on the product side, but you still have to find product market fit. You know. So, what are those arbitrage opportunities which Indian entrepreneurs can find from China and elsewhere? And to put it very brutally, make their clones and just get going.
I think most of the cloning you will see or can happen in the tutoring space, after school tutoring space. I mean, it is very intuitive. And again, I've said it probably 5 times on this session. Parents are willing to pay. Parents are worried about the kids' future. Everybody pays for their kids, right? And people want best university. Education is the ticket out of for social mobility. Everybody knows that, and everybody would pay for that. People will take loans for that, right? So I think if the solutions have to be found, they should be seen in the tutoring space. Now, whatever it is, and one on one, one on many. I mean, we have seen Vedantu just raise funding uh, very recently for that one is to few tutoring. Baiju, of course, is there, but that can't. Topper has raised some more money. Uh, there will be many problems to solve, and looking closely at tutoring models is probably where I will start if I have a cloning approach. The other area where I'll see, where interestingly China has also not seen a lot of innovation, is actually solutions for working adults. Skill upgrades, right, and degree credentials, sorry, diploma to degree upgrades. There is a bit of it, but companies haven't scaled up. There are a few. I mean, China has just, people get obsessed with one aspect and then everybody starts piling in. So it has been ELT and tutoring all the way. But I think in India, there's also a big opportunity to, like in China, to help upskill the workforce. And you're seeing at the top end, you're seeing models like Upgrad and Eruditus and Great Learning and a few others. But there will be many more. There
Okay,
will be opportunity for many more.
sure. So, and if there's a lot of appetite for international investors to invest in Indian education, and I know that personally because I see a lot of inbound interest. Um, how can LEK per se help Indian startups on that front? Maybe international investors wanting to invest in Indian edtech, or Indian edtech companies wanting to proactively come to China or Southeast Asia uh, to raise funds for their ventures.
Look, the biggest contribution, quite honestly, we can make is by helping stimulate the ecosystem. So, for example, this session or otherwise, and just being active contributors in the space. Um, I mean, at this stage, the startup environment and the companies are too nascent to seek any strategic advice. I mean, it's more about product development, finding the product market fit, etc. But we are doing a part in terms of raising the profile and sort of talking about Indian edtech opportunities. But to be fair, it is not something which is not unknown. Um, I mean, China, people are looking at China, and the next big market people look at is India, if from B2C or from a consumer perspective. And when people compare and contrast, all of these things we talked about earlier are add up and are comparable, except of course affluence. And I keep on saying affluence because it has an impact on price point and by definition scalability. Just assume that you can have the same number of consumers, but if your price point is one fourth, your size of your company will be one fourth of that in China. It's not bad, but it's something which is currently it sort of determines strategic priorities for the big investors in the VC space. So I think as of now the focus is on China. It is good. Indian entrepreneurs should use this opportunity and this window of opportunity to actually build up products so that when the time comes, you have been in the market, you have scaled up your offer, and you're ready to take the plunge and take the game to the next level. Till then, work on the product and make sure you're solving something worth solving.
Okay, so guys, what I hear is feel free to reach out to myself or Anip anytime for any kind of guidance. Both in our individual as well as official capacities, will be more than happy to guide you, mentor you uh, uh, to reach a particular level when you become ready for that international investment push, right? So with that, I'd like to jump directly into questions, and we'll we'll probably overshot by 5 to 10 minutes because we started 5 to 10 minutes late. I hope it's okay for you,
Yeah, that's
Anip.
fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sure. So I'm going to read out a few questions which audiences have been asking in the chat. Uh, the first question is from Sarat Pathi, and he says, "How far B2G, and that is business to government model, possible in India? If we propose a powerful hybrid solution with a model that can immediately fit into daily life of school students, will Indian government be ready to outsource the project to a startup? Won't they prefer a established company to startup?" So I can take that question, but first I'd like to hear your views on it.
Why don't you start? Because I have a very dim view on that. So why don't
All
you
right.
start on an optimistic note?
Yeah, sure. So, guys, precisely that's what Edupreneur Village is for. Uh, just to put things in perspective, Sri Aurobindo Society, which is backing Edupreneur Village, runs a program called Zero Investment Innovations in Education Initiatives, ZIIEI. As part of that program, Sri Aurobindo Society has reached out to more than 3 lakh government schools in India. Um, we have touched more than 10 lakh school teachers, and we have memorandum of understandings with more than 20 states of India individually. So the whole value which we bring to the table is, of course, education focused investments, and then helping those investee companies or those companies with whom we partner to scale up through this channel. So this essentially means uh, uh, opening the doors for you guys, uh, making you reach out to the government and proposing your solution to them. And governments today are more than happy to look at the right products for their audience, help in distributing that through a largely a freemium model. Uh, if you say government would be ready to pay for your product, that will be a long shot, because the government procurement procedures, etc., are quite long, and it requires a lot of resources and a lot of logistics to be able to manage that bidding process or to circumvent through those procurement procedures. Uh, but there is a freemium model which can be created, which means government helps to spread your product through its education ecosystem. You get massive adoption, and then that leads to ripple effect in the private sector school education. And then if you are a machine learning based product or an artificial intelligence based product, more the data points you get, the better your product becomes. And that is both a value as well as a valuation driver for your startup. So I hope I've answered uh, to the best of Sarat's satisfaction. Anip, would you like to add something to it?
No, actually, I concur with that. I think it would be very hard to get the government to pay, and the energies of the entrepreneur will not be well spent. But if the product can be all of those aspects, whether it's testing the product, whether it's massive adoption, whether it's data collection, and you can actually sell to parents. So it's, I mean, think of this as B to G to C. And I think if you can actually, if the product is valuable, parents would be willing to pay for it. But you have to keep your eye on the consumer. Like it would be very hard to get the government to pay. But I concur with the strategy which Nitin has outlined.
Sure. Thanks, Anip. So the next question is from Rahul, and he says, "Hi, we provide online tutoring and marketing solutions to tutors. In India's context, which coaching segment or examination do you feel has the great potential in terms of online coaching?" Um, Rahul, you know, there is one thing which is certain in education, that if you can lead your target consumers to some tangible outcome, then they will pay for it. And the ability to pass a particular examination is a tangible outcome. So you will succeed in that. On the question of which segment has got largest potential, well, uh, uh, you know, uh, there are huge number of government exams where huge population of people, take those exams on an annual basis. But those are fairly low ticket monetization opportunities. Uh, uh, Whereas on the IIT side, if you see IIT coaching, there is a tremendous value out there, but at the same time, there is huge competition. Uh, so you really have to make your choices. Uh, this is the best answer I can give. There is no particular segment which I can call out for you, which has got huge numbers and fairly untapped and low competition. You really have to do that search yourself. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that. Anip, any thoughts on that?
Well, from what I understand, it seems that Rahul is providing marketing services to online tutors, or I don't know whether it was online marketing services to tutors or not, uh, or it's marketing services to online tutors. Bottom line is that if your target is tutors, then you have to see that um, like this will be where is pressure. And I think it's almost like are you thinking about becoming the just dial for tutors, or like a marketplace for tutors, or something like that. and there may be some value there, but there you have to think about a bit differently. Where are the bulk of tutors available? And I think the bulk of tutors will actually be for your regular after school tutoring, um, in your grades, let's say 6 to 12. I mean, the competitive exams tutors are usually more savvy, and they would not need this kind of support. Perhaps online marketing they would need it, so you can offer that. But otherwise, you can always offer it to tutors who want to differentiate themselves from all the other tutors in that particular area. So again, we'll need to understand your business model a bit better, but depending on who you are targeting, you could focus on it.
Okay, so I think you can mail us offline and talk a bit more detail about your business model so that we can answer the question in the right manner. Okay. Um, so the next question is from Bhaskar, who says, country like in India, investors are more likely to invest in different fields other than edtech. How can an edtech startup make an investor to invest in our project? Uh, how can we make your startup globally spread? So I think Anip, he's asking that there's an overwhelming interest for startups in other domains, but not in edtech. So how can he make investors interested in investing in his edtech startup?
Look, the making education is very easy. The first thing you have to explain to people is that education is a sticky product, right? And think about let's take Baiju as an example. Theoretically, they're offering courses from grade 4 onwards. Let's say they are able to keep. Why are they doing that? The reason they're doing that, if you get the customer at grade 4, you can in theory keep them till grade 12, right? So the customer lifetime value, which is key for an online or an edtech startup, can be quite high if you are able to keep the retention levels high. So while that is not true for some of the other products, I mean, yeah, you can argue that for Ola or Uber or otherwise, but I mean, there are travel platforms there's no stickiness per se. That's why they offer loyalty programs. But inherently, your consumer, if you're delivering value, could stay with you for much longer. Also, willingness of parents to pay is typically much higher, and even if there's pressure on household budgets, the education budget is often the last one to get cut, right? So in a way, it is a recession resilient. I won't say recession proof, but recession resilient. So there are many good pricing. Parents are usually not as price sensitive. In fact, if the product is good, you can charge premium pricing. You can grow pricing as well. So there are some very unique bits about education which are not present in other industry, and you need to emphasize on some of those as you talk to investors.
Sure. So the next question is from Prashant, who says, how to approach edtech investors? Can we have such type of platform at which we can represent our idea of funding and testing? So I think it's similar to Bhaskar's question. So guys, that's what Edupreneur Village is for. Uh, we are a platform where you can submit your investment application. We'll select top 25 startups in education domain only. We'll work with you on a one-to-one basis to create a shared vision, and then our investment committee will hear your pitch in our uh, uh, global summit on 25th Jan. So that's it for you. In addition to that, I'd also strongly recommend you guys to hear the last webinar, the second webinar, which I hosted with Harman, where we specifically talk about, how to create an investable business plan. You know, what are the things you need to ponder about? What are the questions you need to answer in your business plan to get investor interest? So some of your questions will get addressed if you see that webinar. Um, so moving further, um, there's a question from Raj Sahu who says, "What do you think of a company which enables institutes to get their online tutoring company to set their online tutoring company and supports vernacular language and content gamification? How's the scope and scalability?" Um, so Anip, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. Interesting idea. Um, I think so. It's a question of timing, but I do think that this would be especially as online tutoring models expand in India. What you will start seeing is that the offline only guys will start to feel the pressure, and they would also want to innovate. And often offline tutoring providers would not have the capabilities or the skill sets to do that. So this could be an opportunity. The question is, at what stage would the opportunity emerge, or will give you platform to scale up? Is hard to say, but I would probably start with the bigger guys, either in your city or the absolute big guys, your resonance of Fitji or Akashas of the world, and sort of pilot with them, because I do think that there are elements of the tutoring model which can be which would be more effective with a technology solution.
Okay, so I actually see huge potential in this domain. Both schools and colleges, I would imagine, because these are the institutes which are in the business of teaching, right? They are in the business of recruiting teachers, training them, and making them deliver on a certain pedagogy or curriculum. Uh, so, if you can create a model wherein these institutes can, deliver these sessions or training from their teachers to the external world, I think there's something very big which can shape up there.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
Tutor Vista was the original pioneer of a model like this. Yeah, if you're aiming for the global audience, then it becomes a completely different nuance. I agree with Nitin. But if you're aiming for a Indian audience, then obviously you have to take a different approach.
Sure. So the next question is from Bhaskar again, who says, how can an edtech startup bring students and parents on a single platform and understand that technology can change the learning model? How can we make parents ready to buy the material from us and give it to students? Um, uh, so I think there is a little bit of generality in that question. So Bhaskar, I'd request you to explain your question in a bit more detail offline. Send it to myself. I'll try to get it answered from Anip. Uh, then Satish Kumar says uh, there's a bias towards young guys and IIT IM guys for funding. Uh, do other guys stand a chance? And would you like to take a shot at that?
uh, Look, it's a tough one. Your idea better be good. It's not that IIT IM guys are preferred because just they are from those institutions. I mean, essentially, entrepreneur VCs are looking for various markers for past success, resilience. They're looking for evidence to do the hard work. And if your story is as good as somebody else and your idea is as good as somebody else, maybe the path will be a bit longer, but you will get there. Uh, and yeah, I mean that's basically it. You have to believe in your product and sort of be able to persevere.
Okay, so my thought on that is it's it's about the confidence which you can give to the investor that you'll be able to execute. That confidence marker, as Anip said, could be your education lineage, or uh, it could be, in addition to that, in my opinion, your previous track record. What are the kind of things which you picked up and executed in the past? Um Whether you have an unfair advantage which others don't, as they call it. Uh, Whether you have a complementary set of team members who are a better place to execute it. Whether uh, 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 you are at the right place at the right time and have are street smart enough to pull things off the ground. Um, so there are many things actually, and there are immense number of examples even in India when people without a very strong education lineage have been able to pull off things. You see, Oyo, for example, was started by a 12th standard guy, and he was competing against Zostel, who and a similar startup which was started by I am Calcutta guys, and Oyo made it, right? Uh, he- so it's a clear example of IIT IM kind of lineage not being the sole reason for getting funding or not getting funded. Okay. Uh, so with that, we'll move on to the next one. Hello. Okay, I think the connection failed at Anip's end for some reason. Anip might not be able to take any further questions. Um, with that, I think we will have to wrap up our present session. But I'd request you guys to mail all your questions to myself, and I'll relay them to Anip. I'll also make introductions if you need so, and we'll try to answer each and every question you may have. Okay. With that, I'd like to conclude our session for today. Huge thanks for your participation, guys, and apologies for the technology and other glitches initially when we were starting. And remember, you have to finish your investment application by 16th of December. Uh, Earlier you do it, the better, because then we'll be able to give you feedback which you can improve upon. So if you finish your investment application towards the end of 16th December, then we'll not be able to provide you any feedback. So the earlier the better. Um, do reach out to me at info@edupreneurvillage.com for any queries. Um, oh, we have Anip back. Anip, are you back?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, yes, very well, very well. Okay, so I think there are a couple of questions remaining, and I actually told audience that because Anip had to drop off because of technology issues, we can't take any questions further. But let me just bump off those couple of questions remaining to you, right? Jinin says, generally in edtech industry, consumer, which is student, and customer, which is parent, is different. How to get our consumer to convince customer to buy our product? Our product is little different to understand by parents. How can we solve this?
Well, it
Very
depends on
interesting question.
the product. So, but I would aim for in most cases at the parent, because ultimately the check is signed by the parent, and you have to you have to convince them that that there is a greater chance of success for their son or daughter or ward by using the product than not. And just culturally, our context is that parents will pay. Um, and I think the good part is that institutions like Baiju and of course Shah Rukh Khan is also not doing the job for us. So uh, that's the path you need to take increasingly, and I've seen this in China as well. As more and more companies sort of push towards it, build up huge marketing budget, there's generally optimism around online learning. People get over the stereotype of kids just being in front of phones or tablets, etc., and then adoption starts to happen. But you have to convince them. And the other important thing to do is provide ongoing feedback to parents. That is key. Like whether it's after every lesson or whatever. And again, it depends on the product. But if you can show, one good part about technology is tracking, right? And if you can track progress and show value add, then parents will pay.
Okay. So next question is from Shashidhar, who says, in business, a P&L is maintained. In this case, who maintains it? The educator or a learner? Um, I think the question is a bit unclear, Shashidhar. So if you can enumerate the question better on email, I'll be able to take it and relay it to Anip. The last question is from Dev Rupp, and he says, "What are the point of differences you feel are still untapped in edutech industry in India?" You know, I think he means what are the points of differences between India and China, uh, uh, and uh, and which are those areas which are still untapped in Indian edutech industry. I think we've answered that in quite a bit detail, Anip, but still, if you'd like to take that up.
I'm saying everything is untapped.
Oh,
Even if you look at China, 3 to 5% of the learners are online. 3 to 5% of all school going children are doing some form of online learning. It's a very, very small number. I mean, we're barely scratching the surface. So let's not get worried about market being saturated and all that. It's only getting started and there's huge runway for growth.
okay. So I think we can take a lot of heart from that answer. So the game is right up there for us to play. So, guys, with this, I'd like to wrap up finally our session of today. I'd like to apologize again for a few technical glitches at the start. And finally, remember you have to finish your investment application by 16th of December. I strongly recommend you guys to do it as early as possible so that we can give you feedback. Do reach out to me at info@edupreneurvillage.com for any queries. Uh, and I'll be most happy to relay those queries to Anip or make any introductions if you need so with Anip for any kind of help, guidance, mentorship, etc. We will send the link for this webinar by Tuesday. We will send it through your emails. We'll send the links through your SMSs. We'll send the links through the WhatsApp groups which we have created for Edupreneur Village. So thanks, guys, for spending time on a nice Sunday. Uh, Talk to you later. Anip, a big thanks to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.